Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Short show today, everyone. Hi, everyone.
Sprint of a show.
Yeah, we got about 25 minutes because then you'll get to pregame of the Orioles and Pirates. It's the Pirates opening day. First pitch a little after 4 o'clock. It was flurrying in Pittsburgh today. There was an earthquake in New York today.
End times, everybody.
Yeah. Earthquake in New York. I've seen all the clips of what was going on there. Molly Kieran put out a picture. This is my earthquake face, which I thought was pretty cool. She was in the studio when it happened. There were some clips of like the Yankees warming up, being like, "What?"
And like Network was live. Like Lauren Shahadi was like losing her mind a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're not used to that stuff. That stuff's not supposed to happen around here. We don't get hurricanes often. We don't get earthquakes.
Derechos.
Yeah, we don't get a lot of this often. It happens here or there, but not often.
I don't think you were living here. I think we got the earthquake here in like 2012, I want to say, was when you could actually feel it. That was weird. That was a weird one. Yeah, it was a really weird one.
All right. So that's happening. So let's get to all the stuff we want to get to today. I got a few items I'd like to talk about. Okay. Let's start with the Capitals.
Why?
Wow. So they've just totally ran out of gas.
They have, yeah.
They just ran out of gas. They've been in the playoffs for 6 weeks with an old team that's being kept together with Scotch tape. And the Boston game, leaving that point on the table, seems to have hurt, because then they went to Buffalo and played probably the worst game they've played really since the early part of the season, when they couldn't score and were getting run by average.
They were still only down by a goal heading into the third. It was the worst stretch into the third period as they've had.
The third period was bad against them. Like, they blew a power play immediately, gave up a power play goal, and then it spiraled really fast.
Right.
And then last night, they weren't even really in it.
Yep,
they just kind of weren't in it at home against Pittsburgh. It was kill the Penguins game.
Yes.
And instead, it's awaken the Penguins game. And Washington's now hanging on by a thread. All the metrics led to, all they really got to do is kind of win half their games down the stretch, and they'll get in one way or the other. And now it's the doors wide open for everyone to keep them out. And tonight, they have to play again. And if you watched them last night, they were huffing and puffing really badly. So now they're going to turn around and play a road game against a really good team. They're going to get smoked tonight. They are. I'm gonna watch the women's Final Four, because they're gonna get smoked.
Carolina played last night too, so it's probably just gonna be sloppy. But I expect Carolina to win tonight.
Who's in net?
We don't know, because Kemper is dealing with something.
An injury.
Hunter Shepard was called up on an emergency basis last night, so Shepard's very pedestrian. He's an AHL goalie. That's there's nothing wrong with that, but he's an AHL goalie.
Gave up a couple of not great ones.
He had one last night where it was it's kind of Jover. It was really bad last night. He had one. I forget which one it was, but yeah, I mean, they were outskated, and I told you this going into this week after the Boston game. They had to win against Buffalo and Pittsburgh. They were the two easiest opponents left of the stretch. Yeah, because if they had won those two,
then tonight really wouldn't matter.
Correct. And they have Buffalo again next week. But those are the two that, if you win those two, you're in really good shape. It's hard for you to F it up, even though you're playing Boston and Carolina and everything.
You can limp in.
Yes, correct. Because we know what the score is with some of these better teams. These were two that they couldn't lose, and they lost them both in pretty decidedly fashion. I told you too last night, if they were to just lose to the Penguins in overtime, they still sit at 50% because you kind of keep them at bay there. No, it didn't happen. They were clearly outplayed.
They got a chance because they had a 5-on-3. And then, not unlike the 4-on-3 power play against Boston in overtime, they didn't really manage a good chance. And at one point in the middle of it, gave up a breakaway the other way, and you could see Carlson is just getting outskated. They're just old in certain spots, and they were so huffing and puffing.
What sucks Ovechkin
was sucking wind last night. Just you could see he was efforting to try to do it, and he was sucking wind last night. So the season caught up to him again, and they're out of gas.
What sucks is that team's old too, though. It shouldn't have been as bad as it was last night. That's what sucks. And when the Penguins got up, they just said, "We dare you to try to make any plays, because we're not even going to risk having you score any goals at this point. We're going to lock into the neutral zone." And that's exactly what happened. They had a million icing calls last night, but it didn't matter because the Caps couldn't score. They couldn't finish.
Your guy Pacioretty, oh man, he had a total whiff.
Now that I've called attention to it, it's hard not to see it.
I know.
He's missing wide open chances. He's slow, just like the rest of them. Not saying that's unique to him, but you know they're paying him a lot for a 1-year deal.
Right.
And
At least like that's going to be over.
No,
after
for
this
sure.
year.
But like,
there's a couple others that we're still hanging on to get through.
Yeah, right. Of
another
course.
couple years.
Right. But with him, it's if they had more bodies, he'd be scratched. But they don't because they're just kind of down to the studs of the young guys and whoever's left in the lineup at this point. So, yeah, I mean. Death march is in full effect, I think, at this point.
After the last two games, they're not showing pictures of Ovechkin eating poorly, are they? Going into tonight,
I mean, they are.
That was a good joke for a day or two, but now that they've been outscored 10-3 over the last couple of games, maybe we don't need to see how many Cheetos he's eating going into these games.
They traveled last night.
It isn't funny now.
They traveled last night, so no photos of that on the plane, so that didn't happen. Mike Vogel had a pretty good stat too. They have scored 6 goals in their last 4 games, and that's the story. It's not the other team out skating them. It's actually their scoring has now dried up. Ovechkin's not scoring at the same clip. Granted, he went on a great run. Trust me, I'm not knocking him. But
he scored again last night, too.
Right, but McMichael's not scoring anymore. Lapierre's not scoring anymore. Protas
I like him, though. He's a spark plug.
No, I agree.
like him.
But I'm saying they're in droughts
I'm
now.
not lumping him in because I think like he's a spark plug. He can move. He's speed. In the Boston one, the underrated part of that Boston power play thing was Ovechkin was out there for like 4 minutes.
He was out there the whole time, yeah.
And I'm like, put the young guys in.
Correct, yeah.
Like, what are we doing?
But I'm not knocking them in the same category as Pacioretty. I'm just saying their scoring's dried up here temporarily, and it's a bad drought to have them all dry up at the same time like that. Trust me, McMichael and Lapierre and Protas, they're every night players going into next year. Like they have a nice actually little foundation laid here from what they found out this season with some of those guys, but it's not going well for them right now. And the story, by the way, on McMichael and Protas was that there was probably a little bit of fatigue heading into the All-Star break this year because they played in Hershey, and the Hershey run lasted until late June or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And basically, those guys were not used to playing an NHL schedule and having a short summer. So the All-Star break, they actually came out firing and were really good. I think it's caught right back up to them now, though, now you have to get your body ready for an NHL season next season.
You know what? And Ted needs to stop talking because, so the second Ted came out and said, Potomac Yards, everybody, monumental opportunity. The die is cast. You turned real fast. And then
so you're blaming Ted?
Well, in the press conference to announce they were staying with Muriel Bowser, he went out of his way to talk about how great playoff hockey is. And they were trending towards playoff hockey.
No.
And then all of a sudden it's gone completely bust since he said that. So, Ted.
Do you want to hear another one the fans have gotten a hold of? I'm not blaming this at all because I think this is just what happens. You know TJ Oshie's wife, Lauren, very popular on Instagram. Mm-hmm. I mean, very popular. She posted, I believe, in between the Boston game and the Sabres game, does anyone know any DC seamstresses so we can get playoff jackets made? Please drop your recommendations here.
When you're right on the cusp like this, don't do it.
I'm not blaming her.
Don't do it.
She put it out publicly, and that was the problem there because they do that. Like every time the playoffs start up now, the wives and kids all have matching outfits or whatever, and it's just what happens. But I was kind of like when I saw it, I wouldn't have put that like out in the public like that because you're going to get that screenshotted. And what happened last night, they lost. And I saw a few fans go, they're 0-2-1 since Lauren Oshie asked for someone to make playoff jackets. So
when
that's
Ted
happening.
went out of his way to say playoff hockey is really great. And I went, oh, no. I'm like, don't. You just jinxed it. And they went totally bust ever since then.
The only redeeming factor here is we are stuck in our own
He's the cooler. He's the cooler. He walks up to the craps table and pick up your money because you're not like it's gonna be a 7. Watch, here it comes.
The only thing is we are stuck in our caps bubble here in DC, and I'll say this: nobody's grabbed the playoff spot. Like that's the one benefit here.
That's true.
That
they're not out, but
right. It's not like
tonight doesn't feel like that's not lining up very well.
But even going into this week, it was not like we were like, oh, the Caps are so hot right now. Like, they're so good. It was, wow, none of these teams around them are grabbing that playoff spot. The Caps are now one of those teams. So don't count them out, obviously, but no other team is really hot.
Well,
the Penguins are hot, but that's
they're actually behind the Islanders now for the wild card spot.
Right.
A point.
Yep.
But they have played one less game than them. They've played the same amount as Detroit. They still have played one less game than Philadelphia, and they're only a point behind them. So they aren't out.
Yep.
But this one tonight lines up like just forget it.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So they'll have 6 games left, and we'll see where it shakes out over the weekend. But they'll have 6 games left, and now they're going to have to win the majority of them.
Right.
Is
Correct.
what it is.
Correct. Yes.
They're going to have to win the majority of them to jump over these teams. They do play the Flyers at the end of the year, so that's good
That's
news.
starting to shape up as a big game.
It is, but like the Islanders are only a point behind them for
Yep.
third, so they could
Correct.
jump them. That could happen.
What I think would be a crazy scenario, this has happened once or twice over the years, is there's been times where 2 teams enter into a game and 1 point can get both teams in.
Oh.
I wonder if that scenario pops up here, or they just try to play a game. But it's one of those things. It's happened over the years where it's like, oh, both teams get a point, it bounces to other teams.
Well,
So-
in that case, like the team who scores first, the other team's going to be like, "Oh my god!"
Right. Full panic. Yes,
Full panic. Yeah. Whoever scores first is like, "Okay, we're good."
Yeah, right.
We're good.
Exactly. So, I mean,
All right.
tonight aside, they need to win Sunday because it's Ottawa, and as we call those auto-win games, they have to win that one.
And they get Buffalo again here.
No, it's in
right?
Buffalo. It's in Buffalo.
Oh, they're playing up there again?
Yeah, they travel up there again. Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. See
It's,
if they, I have no hope for tonight because they're playing a really good team that can outskate them, and they were just so their car was dead. last night.
Here's what's left for them because it's easy now. Hurricanes tonight, Senators on Sunday, at Red Wings Tuesday. Also a massive game there. Red Wings have.
I think if they beat both Ottawa and Detroit, then I think they'll be pretty much in pretty good shape at that point again. Or at least I have a real legitimate shot because they'll get the Flyers at the end, so I'll have a legitimate shot at it.
At Buffalo that next Thursday. And then they host Tampa on Saturday,
who is basically in the playoffs. They're in.
Correct, but they're still playing for
they could get third place in their division and not be the wild card. They're only 2 points back of Toronto.
So they're still playing for seeding. So
then it will come down. It depends what they want. Do they want to play Florida or do they want to play as the wild card? I don't know.
Right, I'm not sure.
Because in this playoffs, seeding doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
You just got to get in. It doesn't matter.
So Hurricanes, Senators, Red Wings at Sabres. They host the Lightning. Then they host the Bruins that Monday, and then
who could be the number 1 seed, and again would be, do they want that?
Correct.
Right.
So then that's Monday, April 15th, and then Tuesday, the following night, is the last game against the Flyers.
My gut says that the Caps and Flyers will be playing for 1 spot, if at all.
I agree.
Or neither one of them will.
Right.
It's going to be one of those. It could be a nothing game. It could be both of them flame out because the Flyers have been flaming out too.
But everybody's flaming out. That's the joke.
Right.
like the Caps are now just like everyone else. Nobody wants the last 2 spots.
All right. Subject 2.
Yeah.
And this is just my wheelhouse. And this is the talent has taken over. Norby Williamson is out at ESPN, and most of you do not know who he is.
Some know from a certain show.
From McAfee show, you know who he is. And maybe in the past, when you've heard other talent at ESPN call him out personally, you probably know who he is. But he is a kingmaker of sorts up there, has been for a very long time. He essentially ran SportsCenter in its heyday for a long time. So he decided whether you'd be a star or not by placing you in the spots you would be in. And through the years, many talent have kind of come and gone. When I was at ESPN myself and through SportsCenter, he actually wasn't running SportsCenter at the time. He was doing a different role in a major executive capacity. So I didn't have a lot because that's where I was kind of placed. I didn't actually have a lot of interaction with him. I had different bosses than he did, but I knew of his reputation with don't cross him, and also whatever he decides goes. And then McAfee fired at him hard when the New York Post leaked out McAfee's ratings are problematic.
Right.
And McAfee went at him personally hard, didn't back down, and they did nothing to McAfee. And here we are a couple months later, and he won that war. And they can sit there and pretend that, that's a coincidence. He's been there 40 years. It's time to move on, whatever. But it was Norby lost his power with the talent. The shift has happened here. It's the NBA at ESPN now. The talent rules the roost, not the executives anymore. And when McAfee says you got to go, they got to go. So this is good news. Stephen A. Smith loves every second of this too, because he's going to sit there and go, oh, really? That means the most powerful people who quote unquote, pull the strings here no longer have that power if you're a person like me.
That's right.
Now, like people like myself, like back in the day, and the current anchors who we used to call general population, that nothing changes for them really. People will decide where they go and what they do. But the people like McAfee, Greeny to some degree, Scott Van Pelt, Stephen A. Smith, the bigger names, this is a very empowering day for them to go, we hold the cards now.
Right.
We hold the cards. And McAfee just went, see ya, buddy.
Right.
Get out of my way, or I will off you.
Right.
And in the past, nobody's pulled that off at ESPN. ESPN is very protective of, we are who we are. We're the brand. We decide what happens here. And if any of you get out of line or get a funny thought about that, we will off you. And not anymore. So this is a big deal for ESPN. It is.
It's pretty ironic because McAfee's going live from Philly today from WrestleMania, and he has this huge crowd behind him. And I wonder how it makes him feel that he's literally played the heel for this guy.
I have a feeling he's just going to let it go because like this isn't a proxy war that people know of. Like it's why I go back to like Norby Williamson is a massive influential person at ESPN and has been for 4 decades. But I don't think people know that.
Yeah.
I think most people don't know that. And when he named him, his name got put out there. It's all people like Richard Deitch and Jim Miller and Andrew Marchand. All the people who cover sports media know this and knew this was a really big thing. But I think the general population is like, I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah.
It's not Vince McMahon. He doesn't show up on the shows and like plays the heel as like the guy who pulls the strings. That's not what this is. But I'm just telling you internally, this is a humongous day. And if you're a talent at ESPN, I think it's a good day because it's just a sign of ESPN recognizes that the talent has the power now, or the select few.
Top talent, yeah.
The top talent has the power.
Yep.
Stephen A. Smith was run out of there once.
Yep.
Norby, I'm sure, had some say in all of that before he ever came back and second incarnation got more popular than he was.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal that happened today. All right, issue 3, since we have 9 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Final fours. So let's start with the women's because it's tonight.
Sure.
You want to play this bite from Brianna Stewart?
Sure,
What show was she on?
So this wasn't. This is just Final Four coverage. This is from Nicole Auerbach, though, from The Athletic, who is just all over college
Okay,
sports.
so she's talking to Brianna Stewart, who played in what was the most recent UConn dynasty, right? Because Brianna Stewart won 4.
Yep.
Actually, since then, it's been either South Carolina or other teams, actually, that have kind of taken it. But UConn's back in the Final Four again, so it's not like they went anywhere. But so here was Nicole Auerbach talking to Brianna Stewart about specifically Caitlin Clark.
So there's been this hot take debate about, do you need to have a championship for legacy when you talk about a women's college basketball player? You are the expert on this since you have 4.
Yeah.
Does Caitlin Clark need a championship to be considered one of the greats in women's college basketball history?
Yeah, she does. I think so. Because then you're gonna look 10 years back and you're gonna see all the records she's broken and the points and stuff like that. But anybody knows, your goal when you play college basketball is to win a national championship.
Okay. All right. I appreciate how matter of fact she was about it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And do I totally agree? Because this was, remember, we were making fun of earlier this week. Stephen A. Smith said her legacy was on the line. And I'm like, not really. Like, I don't think so. I think no matter how this ends up, she will own that points record. That's going to be hard to match if someone like Juju won't stay for 4 years and play. Maybe she will because it's a different situation than the men's game. But the popularity of the sport is exponentially different. Her record stands as it stands. And so they had the largest audience ever, more than the Elite 8 games of the day before in the men's tournament, which I thought might happen. It proves that there's more interest in her and this story than the men's game this year. Now that she's gone, we'll see what happens as a carryover. But it has proven out. So I disagree with that. I don't think she needs to win for that. I think she's already done what her duty is for the sport, by far, not even close. And I would also say this to Brianna Stewart respectfully, and she's a great player. She played at a dynasty after it had already won 1 million championships with a bunch of other players that play in the WNBA with her. That's not the case with what Caitlin Clark did. So to dismiss her as she won't be part of this conversation of greatest players ever unless she wins a championship, I don't think that's really fair. Like, UConn has been a dynasty. She was part of it. She was a great part of it, but she's been part of it. And she stayed home, played for a program that doesn't win on this level at all, ever, has been to the Final Four back-to-back years, and potentially could win a championship this year. And even if she doesn't and loses to an undefeated team, by the way, I don't think that should be even comparable at all, because not that I know enough about it, but when I watch them play, I don't see other girls on her team that I'm like, oh, they're really good too. And if you watch the UConn teams of the past, you do.
Yeah, they're stacked, yeah.
Yes. So I don't think that's fair. I honestly really don't think that's a fair comparison at all. She's openly, this week was all about Caitlin Clark talking about how she wanted to go to UConn, and they didn't recruit her to go to UConn.
And it wasn't like a contentious thing. Like, no. Gino was like, yeah, like that happened.
Well, they had the other girl.
Yeah, right. You're right.
Paige.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he made a choice, like whatever. And so she ended up staying home at a non-traditional powerhouse, and they've been to the championship game one year, and they're in the Final Four and potentially farther this year. Oh, I think she's done everything she could to solidify exactly who she is. And whether she wins or not really isn't even on her. It's whether her team's good enough to win. It's like saying like a star in the NBA isn't, you're not good enough unless you win a championship. But if they played on a team that never gave them much help, you know how this goes. They never really had a real shot to win it.
It's also, they were a dynasty because they were a monopoly. They were the most successful women's basketball team, and when you weren't handing out NIL money, you could do what you wanted because you were the most successful women's basketball program in the country. Now, Caitlin Clark is a part of this whole group of women's players, though, that now are all getting the NIL money, getting the attention separately, so it's basically been spread out. UConn can't get everybody because they can't pay for everybody. It's a different landscape, actually.
Yes.
So that's where I disagree with her, too. It's actually, we have to have a discussion like this. It's a different era now. Like, even though it was only a little bit ago, it's a different era now. There's a bunch of teams that have one of these stars now. UConn doesn't have all of them.
That's right.
Is what it is.
And then, so I just looked this up real quick. There's like this blog called the UConn blog. 15 former UConn players are on WNBA teams right now.
Yeah.
If I did how many Iowa players are on there, it's probably none or one or something like that. So she did it at a very different place.
Right.
So I just don't think it's a comparable thing.
They were a super team.
Yes. And they have been for a long time. And not like the superstars of the WNBA came from there.
Yeah, right.
Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Stewie, all of them. Anyway.
Triggering for me, but
right.
anyways.
As for the Final Four tonight, it's hard to pick against South Carolina. They've lost to nobody.
That's right, yeah.
So I'll pick them to get to the championship game. And then the UConn-Iowa game is kind of can't miss sports TV tonight.
Correct, yep.
And you know what? After all of that, fuel to the fire. Give me Caitlin and company. They scored 90 against LSU.
Yeah.
I bet they score a ton again tonight.
Sure.
So I'm hoping we do get South Carolina, Iowa. I think that'd be amazing to get that.
I agree. I think everyone's begging for that to happen because it becomes can't miss again. I mean, it's all can't miss at this point, but if it was Iowa, South Carolina, I think people would lose their mind. So I'm hoping that's what it is as well.
Okay. Tomorrow, men's Final Four. We get NC State, Purdue. So everybody's favorite big man, heater of all heaters, taking on Purdue. I am going to stay where I was early in the week. I hate this matchup for NC State. I love what they're doing, but DJ Burns better get Edie in foul trouble or they're going to have a hard time because everybody's pointing when they did the game the other day where they were like, if you double team him, he's really good at passing out of it. And if you don't, good luck stopping him. Well, I don't think Purdue has to double team him because they're going to put Edie on him in the blocks. And I haven't seen anything from him out in the perimeter that would suggest he could pull Edie away from the basket. So I hate this matchup for them.
Yep.
Purdue, and I actually think handily by like 10.
I agree.
Yeah, I think Purdue knocks them off bad.
Ends.
It's over.
Yep.
So then who do they get, Alabama or UConn? So I think Alabama can play at the pace necessitated to do this, but they're going to have to play at a high level at that pace. There's a bunch of ways to win, and one of them is do you have just better players than everybody else?
Right.
And I'm not sure that UConn really does, and I think that's kind of the magic of them. But or you can go another way, Tony Bennett's way, where you become a great defensive team, but you're a high wire act because if you don't hit shots, you're in trouble. You keep teams in games, or you're UConn and you're so good that you're able to play at an extremely high pace.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's beating them. Give me UConn over Alabama, and I'll take UConn Purdue in the championship game, and we'll talk about that on Monday.
Yep, I agree with you. UConn Purdue. UConn's just blowing everyone out. How do you pick against them at this point?
I don't think you can.
Yep.
All right, everybody. Enjoy the Orioles and Pirates, and I'll talk to you on Monday. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.